special ability. He tried making the apple activated spell, and all that emerged from the ground was a tiny spill of figure and puzzle spider, yet utterly useless. After Baker's activation, Pillar, the protagonist finally discovered its true effect. The apple accelerated sleep-induced magic recovery, reducing the time needed to fully replenish his magic from 6 hours to 5. The only downside was that once the special ability was activated, the apple would take root completely, growing like a little tree and never being able to be retracted again. The days that followed were monotonous yet predictable. In the morning, he practiced swordsmanship with his childhood friend, Karina, and morale to been training since she was born. Even though the summoned beast already beat his stats far beyond those of Woodknock people, he still couldn't beat them. Her nurture talent for swordsmanship was summoned Kuvorni. In the afternoon, he practiced full instance of Eversy, hurling them a total of 200,000 times until his throwing skill reached level 3. As for his summoner skills, he didn't use them frequently. His magic was limited, so he only activated them every 5 hours. Just steady experience gains were enough for him. At first, he thought such a mundane life was perfectly acceptable. At worst, his level would rise a bit slower. But then, out of nowhere, bad news struck. His father, while out hunting, had been seriously injured. Though the wound was active, it required long-term rest and recuperation. For years, his father had been defending his brave, but know that the while out, the household certainly lost its social food. His pregnant mother and young brother both being correct. The protagonist realized he could no longer stay in the shadows. He had to step up and support the family. The next day, he took on all the farm work himself. With the help of his summoned beasts, his strength had already far surpassed that of an average adult. Although his efforts were somewhat conspicuous, to others he just seemed like a peasant kid who'd suddenly become sensible despite lacking any real talent. Plus, with Karina, the future sword scene, drawing all the attention in the village, he wouldn't attract undue scrutiny at all. Soon after, his father woke up, but his body remained too weak to work. The burden of providing for the family now rested entirely on the protagonist's shoulders. With winter approaching, he knew he had to stockpile food as quickly as possible. In previous years, his father could print nearly 100 kilograms of wild boar meat, but now there's printing for hunting. The protagonist had new choice were too. With Catherine wild birds to Steve Alfunga, doing printing of Brizarel, and now to see them full of wonder. His summoned frog had a ton ability, so the protagonist planned to use it as bait. Combined with simple traps, he managed to catch dozens of wild birds, but plans always fall apart when reality intervenes. Instead of birds, he ended up facing a tier 1 monster, the Grey Herring. The frog he'd summoned was only at the giant level, and against a tier 1 monster, it was utterly helpless. At first, the protagonist's instinct was a retreat, but the very next second, it froze in place. Was this really crisis? No, it was his only chance to level up. If he was playing to the play, he'd never managed to raise his Kakin's level in even play life. But as he was, facing tier 1 monster right before his eyes, and thanks to his summoned beast's full support, his overall strength was already no weaker than that of a tier 1 monster. His throwing skill was at level 3, with range and power sufficient to deal serious damage. First, he threw a stone from afar, hitting the Huron hard. Then, he gripped his wooden sword and charged forward, simultaneously summoning several butcher dogs to launch biting attacks, a combination that was practically flawless. Still, he underestimated the monster's strength. The Heron flew into a furious rage, then retaliated instantly, killing the butcher dogs in one blow. The protagonist waited the rest of the time, but the Huron flew strikes into them, laying bugs. It was at that moment that he finally understood a deadly truth. Once a summoned beast was killed, the corresponding buds would vanish immediately, and its stats would plummet dramatically. This was his first real battle against a monster, and he found himself in a life-or-death situation. At the last moment, he decided to do the opposite of what he'd planned. He pulled out from his summoning space the leech, the seemingly most useless of all summoned beasts. Its attack power wasn't high, but at least it could serve as a distraction. He fully intended to use the leech briefly to survive himself some time and escape. But to relate with Hummer, he realized summoning Chalkin beast leeches would actually suck in blood. He was driven to the survive his escape. That realization made him instantly abandon any thoughts of running away. Although the leech would be killed in one hit, it could severely weaken the monster's status. So he kept repeating this tactic, summoning aggressive pet beasts to join in the attack. After countless rounds of fighting, the young man finally dealt the final blow, slaying the Huron once and for all. Normally, defeating a tier D monster would earn 100 experience points, enough to let an ordinary person jump several levels. But he'd chosen Hum mode, where the experience of points, so leveling up was 100 plus pointer. Those 100 points eliminates propelled one tenth of his experience bar, leaving his level self at 1. Why? E.T., even just having a glimmer of hope for leveling up made him feel utterly satisfied. The Heron's meat could be saved for winter, so he carried its corpse back home. This move shocked the entire village. After all, taking down a tier monster usually required several strong adult men working together, but here was a 6-year-old boy doing it all by himself. So, fortunately, he'd been prepared all along in line, claiming that the hearing had already been severely wounded and dulled by marks when Spotty said no safe. His explanation lead proved sense. In everything that, he'd simply got him perfectly walking, and while concealing the turf, it because the proficiency about the instances in its worth. To wound and necessary proof, he could only muddle through for now. The Heron's feathers and magical stones were both quite valuable, but all his first harvest had to be turned over to the Lord at a rate of 60%. In the end, all he could keep was just 10 kilograms of meat. Ever since then, he'd gone out into the wild every day to hunt herons. The frog would provoke and draw attention, the water would weaken their abilities, Pucci would watch the frontal attack, while he himself would deliver the fatal blow. That day, he finally managed to slay a 10th heron. The experience he accumulated was just enough to utilize from level 1 to level 2. His abilities had nearly doubled the load to the floor. The pit of Blathy, back for the curing with Eslunuo. Already used to Karina, he'd been utterly powerless against her. Now, at least he had room to parry her attacks. Though he still couldn't match a 3-star opponent, taking on a 1-star rival was like crushing them utterly. The 1-star boy was someone he'd met by chance after his 5th birthday assessment. He always seemed to go looking for trouble, challenging him to duels, and each time he'd been fairly beaten, providing the perfect outlet for his frustrations. And he killed more and more hearts. His strength could no longer remain hidden. His parents had actually noticed something called Levra. the thick always drove to blind delight, so he is saying it to concur with himself. Hikaran says more. He'd been motorsporting not a food, who had the naturals had a strong guru, and endowed with intelligence and strength beyond the ordinary. It was just that completing the divine trials of feat even 100 people might struggle to achieve was why his abilities had appeared so low during the assessment. As for the profession of summoner, though he hadn't said a single word about it, merely brushing it off vaguely. After all, in this world, magical beasts were humanity's natural enemies, and summoners who could call forth such beasts were bound to attract suspicion and hostility. Thankfully, his parents hadn't crossed war, and just what some Huron had to endure such hardship with such a image. On the other hand, to himself had become pretty. His metal was furry, mangled, and his fellow, Styrikari from Scylla's injury, couldn't work outside the home. Without him, the family simply wouldn't survive this winter. When they learned of his secret, his parents urged him not to reveal it to anyone except for one person, Gerda, his father's best friend. In the boy's heart, Gerda was already like a second father. Gerda taught him countless daily things. Serfs weren't allowed to leave the village freely, but Gerda occasionally went into town for shop, always taking them along to lend their prices and avoid falling into traps. It was from Gerda that he first learned to be able to leave the serfs to really encounter the quite 10 gold coins to the Lord. A king came before him used to be changed for 10 silver coins into 0.1 gold coin. To collect 10 gold coins, he'd meet to prepare the 10 coins. This goal became his driving force. Once he became a commoner, he'd be free to leave the village, with more opportunities to hunt monsters and level up quickly. He'd once thought about buying a weapon to boost his efficiency, but the price was far too high, so he'd given up. Besides, as a summoner, it wasn't really a necessity right now. He thought his days ahead would just be a routine of hunting rumors and accumulating gold, but then, out of nowhere, came bad news. His father had just recovered from his injury, and the Lord had told him his the number of wild boar cases recovered from this should increase from 10 to 15 gold. Officially, the Lord said he'd seen commoners for none, but in reality, those people had zero experience and would only make things worse. After all, it was precisely because of wild boar hunting that his father had been injured in the first place. Now that the task had doubled, it meant the future would only get much more dangerous. Even if he managed to meet the quota, the Lord would likely keep raising the bar, demanding even more. But serfs' opinions carried absolutely no weight in front of the Lord. If they refused, they'd lose even the land independent of forced survival, leaving the whole family completely cornered. Back then, he might have just stood by and watched, but now that his family knew about his free strength, how could he possibly stay on? Pack likely assembly to treat this wild boar hunt. Directly by, and the Patamlis had recently distributed, earning the chance to go hunting alongside the villagers. The target this time was a Class C monster, the wild boar. Considering his age and safety, he was only allowed to watch from afar and wasn't permitted to take part directly in the hunt. The villagers participating in the hunt had skill levels ranging roughly from Class C to this level. They'd already developed a well-established battle protocol for hunting wild boars. To outsiders, this observation trail was seen to offer for Tablish nothing more than an opportunity to broaden his horizons new real practical battle with them. But no one knew his weapon. Titting, he would seem to be there when a hawk can snag his nothing. At Class C Mothra, the wild boar with an healthy mountain swinging towards for hunting slay. 4 ordinary newcomers participating in the kill usually allowed them to jump several levels at once. But constrained by the rule that he could only watch from a distance, how could he possibly manage to get credit for the kill? While this might seem impossible for others, for him, as a summoner, it was entirely doable. It's not impossible to achieve. Unnoticed by anyone, the male protagonist has already secretly accumulated experience points and successfully leveled up to level 7. It turned out that right from the moment the wild Porpia, it quietly released its 7th beast. According to the rules of this world, getting the 6 points isn't necessarily required to even get it. Hitting at the summoned beast is called them Bevel.